Um, if someone wants to share a little history on the startup days of Neighbor Brigade and on Pam and Jean.
Well, I think it's like it stems from when Jean and Pam were, first going through treatments. The outpouring of care and concern. They were very public in their illness. Very open with their friends, and I think in kind, the community really showed up and with meals and kept them company when they went to their treatments. And so I think Neighbor Brigade really just stemmed from their deep appreciation of the care that they were given, and wanting to make sure that other people in the community had it if they wanted it. If anybody else wanted to make their journey more public, that they should know that their community was here to help in any way they could. So if your kids needed a tutor, while one of the parents was going through a crisis, it was there. If you needed a meal, it was there. And I think early on, there were even she got a few phone calls where people were a little upset that they thought it should be means-based, because they would show up at some of these big houses in Wayland with beautiful fancy cars in the driveway and say, it doesn't feel right that I'm bringing them a meal. And Pam would explain to them that this isn't means-based. This is, that's someone's mom, and kids need to know that there are other moms in the community that care. And, that's what it's about. This isn't about wealthy people that can afford takeout. This is about community. So I think it all stemmed from that.
Yeah, and like you had said before, it's kind of a time in the culture when not a lot of people have a lot of friends in the community and know all their neighbors and are big just have big networks the way that Mom and Jean did. And Mom and Jean both just really believe that everyone deserves to have the network that they have. So that's what they wanted to create for others in the situation that they were put in.
What are some of your vivid memories of the behind the scenes of starting Neighbor Brigade? What, when you picture starting Neighbor Brigade, Pam, what comes to mind, essentially?
I remember helping her with that event at Weston Golf Club, was it? We helped coordinate some of that. And I also have very early memories with Jean speeding us around in her Lexus, going from house to house, dropping off flyers and getting the word out. So yeah, definitely blurry memories, but they exist.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
So long, because it started as Wayland Angels.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in 4th grade, and then it grew into Neighbor Brigade. So
yeah, Mom was only in her 30s.
Wild.
I remember watching her type away on her computer. And Uncle Mike, you mentioned how everything used to be on an Excel spreadsheet. And I remember when she was learning how to get good at Excel spreadsheets and watching her type away. And I remember when they were coming up with the name Neighbor Brigade, and they just went through the dictionary and split up sections of the dictionary and found words that would work. And I remember all the whiteboards in our office and just the way that the office kind of shifted into her space to work on Neighbor Brigade stuff. And we often talk about how we don't remember a lot of our childhood and a lot of her sickness and a lot of the Neighbor Brigade stuff, but there are the snippets of very vivid images that we hold on to.
And even when it was just starting out and it was just Wayland Angels, who were just serving that one community, she still had that grand vision of expanding it. In her mind, it was going to go nationwide. She had no doubts about that. She realized there are families in need everywhere, and she wanted to help them. She was determined to do that. I remember when it started, Kevin mentioned the grassroots part of it. It was email, it was spreadsheets, it was phone calls. And it was Jean showing up at somebody's door with lunch and not taking no for an answer. So it wasn't social media, and they didn't have a website. This was two very strong, determined women who were going to support families in crisis. They'd gone through it themselves. They knew what going through cancer treatment was like. It was draining on everyone, the entire family.
Yeah.
I also remember one of the early recipients was that young girl, Cheyenne. And I don't remember a lot about that, but I do have one memory of going to her house with my mom. And Cheyenne was like so sick, and we went into the house and I think we dropped off a meal or a cooler of stuff. And I think that really speaks to the community aspect of it, and the fact that she didn't involve us as kids too, and didn't want to shield us from what other people were going through, and from the beauty of showing up for these people at any age and no matter what circumstances are going on. And so from a young age, she was always bringing us along when she could, especially me, because I was so young and attached to her hips. So I was there for part of it. And she did show us from such a young age how important it is to be there for people, even when it's not pretty and it's hard and it's sad. But that is also where the beauty comes in of community and supporting each other.
Yeah.
I think that's a good segue into kind of talking about why this was important to Pam to start. So whoever wants to take that question.
I mean, we touched on it pretty much in the last prompt, but I mean, it was important for her because through her own suffering and her experience, she wanted to use that experience to like help other people or having that experience. And like by knowing the way that she was treated when she was going through all of that, she learned how to treat other people that were going through that. So like even the littlest things, like how she knew that she was like so tired and she wouldn't always want people to come inside when they were delivering meals. Like she just wanted them to like drop it off, and like she couldn't have all these conversations with people, and just like little things like that, that like from having the own experience herself, it's just all the little details were really important in creating everything that like Neighbor Brigade became.
So true. So
I
true.
think part of it emanates too just from Pam's deep Christian faith, that she believed so much in the importance of helping others, people who really needed help. And I think that really drove a lot of her commitment and perseverance. I mean, starting up any company or nonprofit is very, very difficult. And so I know that there were a lot of challenges along the way. Just getting people to volunteer to be a chapter leader is not an easy thing to do. And a lot of, other things came along the way. And I think it just her just commitment from her deep Christian faith, that kind of kept it going, allowed this thing to grow into what it is today.
Yeah. Auntie Mary, do you want to say what you said earlier on the subject of getting people to be chapter leaders? Was that you that said?
Yeah, so the thing that I always take away from Pam, and I often share with the volunteers of Neighbor Brigade today, is that one that I didn't mention was be careful not to over volunteer, which is so interesting because then she turned around and did this. But Pam was always one, she was so giving, right? Like she just could not say no. And so the one thing that Pam was very, very good at was if someone expressed any interest in either being a volunteer or more importantly, being a chapter leader, she would just say, oh, let's go grab a cup of coffee. Even if they were like, I don't think I have the time, but I want to learn more. By the time that coffee was done, she had a signed up chapter leader for a brand new town. And that's just, she was just so successful at sharing her vision and helping people understand. And her approach was always so positive, and the glass is half full all the time. All the time. I mean, I just read an email from her. Her last end of year email was December, obviously 2011. And she was just so positive and so how much they had grown and we're looking forward to the next year. And this is how many chapters we have. And this is how many volunteers we have. And she was just always so incredibly positive. So much so that I don't know that any of us here knew just how sick she was, even up until the week before she passed. She was just going. So strong, so positive, never complained. The first time I ever heard Pam ever complain was probably, and this is no embellishment whatsoever, 2 weeks before she passed was the first time I heard her say, this is really hard. This illness is really hard. That's how she was such a leader.
Yeah, I think it stemmed from her experience. I mean, her life experience, her story is what, kept her deeply connected to the cause. So when she sat down face to face with somebody over a cup of coffee, first she had such a compelling story and was so deeply, passion, and it's very easy to transform somebody when you sit down and you're fully authentic and say, this was my experience, and this is what we can bring to other people. So you're right. I mean, and all of it, everything grew from, everything about her grew from this experience, growing Neighbor Brigade, her faith, her trust and sense of community, family, everything. It was an amazing growth experience. All of it, her education, everything.
All like
Quite a time.
lined up the way it was supposed to.
I know this doesn't answer the question, but Auntie Mary, it's funny that you say that people really didn't know how sick she was until 2 weeks before she died. And I've always felt like that for myself, but I always thought it was because I was so young that people just weren't telling me anything. But that was just how she was. Like, she was a fighter, but also a believer in God and in her journey. And she didn't complain and didn't, like, to the extent that we didn't know how sick she was. And not just because I was in high school and no one told me.
No, she was just so
Also that though.
humble.
Yeah.
So
Well,
humble.
and again, from her own experience, she had been down, she'd been on the mat before, and she fought back and look at all she did, from her first diagnosis, going through that first year of treatment. In that time, she finished her degree, she continued to raise her family, she grew Neighbor Brigade. And so, so right up until, 2 weeks before she realized I can't take another step, she fully expected to continue on. Yeah, it just wasn't in her DNA to stop. So
Not Effie Manicus's daughter.
Yeah.
So.
Kevin, I remember her telling me when she got cancer that it was one of the best things that happened because of the way she was treated. And she said, I'll never forget it. And I want to make sure that I impact people the way they impacted me, change my life forever. And I want to change the lives of others forever. And when she told you something, you took it to the bank because you had that persuasive charisma. I think someone else said it a couple of times. She wouldn't take no for an answer. But she just had, you just look at her. She just had that strong, like, I'm gonna help people and make this world a better place.
And so trustworthy. Just everybody's best friend. Anybody who was friends with Pam was a best friend. Like, lots of loyalty,
Dad, do you want to say what you said before about her vision and how she would share her vision and people would be like, you know what, maybe, but probably not realistic?
Yeah. Well, yeah, again, I think just because she had such a great story, and really, we're so deeply connected because of her story to, that really was the bridge for her to connect to everybody on both sides of Neighbor Brigade, whether it was, some of the financial supporters or the people in need. It was based on her life experience. So yeah, when she came up with ideas for fundraising, she her and just in our community, the number of consultants and nonprofit professionals, they're everywhere, and she'd run into them at all aspects of life and have coffees and, lunches. And whenever she said, this is what I'm going to do, I got an idea for a fundraiser. I'm going to ask 10 people to give me $10,000 each. And, and they'd be like, you might want to, that's not really realistic, damper it down. I love your exuberance. I love your excitement, but, and she did it, I don't think she asked 11 people, and then she had an idea for, an auction for a fundraiser, and she had a number in mind, which she was going to hit for a goal, and talk to these professionals, and they all say, it's a great idea, but usually these things don't go the way you think, and you might want to lower your expectations, and it might cost you a lot of money. Usually, you might want to hire, a company that can take care of that, and just be happy with getting 50% of the, receipt. And she'd say, I think we can do it. And sure enough, she'd set her goal, have her event, and nail it. And my takeaway is really, it's because it was authentic, deeply connected, and it was her story. And, that's what resonated with everybody, So it worked. Everywhere she went, it worked because it was real.
I think she would be so happy that, like, even though it's so different and it looks so different from when she was in charge, she would be so happy with, I was saying this before we were recording, but she would be so happy with the growth and how Pam's run is promoting and marketing Neighbor Brigade so much, because when she was planning the fundraisers, they raised so much money, but there was not a lot of marketing or promotion of Neighbor Brigade in order to get more chapters and volunteers. So now, just talking about Neighbor Brigade, it's more about the organization and less so about our mom and just her story, which not in a bad way. I just mean, like, Neighbor Brigade has kind of taken on its own thing, and it's grown in a way that I think she would be really happy and proud of, because she was so selfless. She didn't want it to be all about her. But I know, like, when she was featured in like People magazine and the Boston Globe, and all of the marketing and stuff was so organic and also like grassroots, and it was just a lot more manual labor. But I don't know, I'm just kind of rambling now, but I think she would be really happy with the way that it's grown, even if it's different from what she thought that it would look like.
Yeah, I think she had a vision for Neighbor Brigade, but it didn't preclude her from, she went to different churches, and she was thrilled if they just took the platform and did it within their community, their church community. She didn't care that they took the Neighbor Brigade, and then I think early on there was a community that basically said, I'm going to take the platform, but I really don't really need the affiliation, and she struggled with it a little bit, but she realized at least she's doing the good work, the work's being done, and meeting the needs of the community is more important than branding. So I think in a bigger sense, it probably wouldn't matter too much that, there was X number of communities, and it's more a matter of people's needs are being met. And she didn't care if it said Neighbor Brigade, and she didn't care if they were just using the platform in a specific church. I think she just loved it. I mean, she loved doing the administrative portion of it. She loved, meeting people and doing the living room portion of it, so I think she was just deeply passionate, and everything else just with the way it fell into place, as long as, people in need were having some needs met.
I mean, I think I think she's quite a driver, and still, I think we're still driving to get her dream of being a national chapter. I think she would be proud of the way that the team has matured, that we've continued to grow, that we've matured the organization, that we've gone through several leaders, and they've continued to help to kind of grow and mature and be able to address many more communities. And gone through some tough times. You know, the pandemic obviously threw a curve at us in terms of ability to deliver foods, and the organization able to step up and do some different things, maybe adopting maybe even some higher risk and be able to continue to save lives or change lives. So I think she'd be very proud about where we've come. And I know, you know, for me, like when I go to like Pam's Run, for example, I just see like the people there and just the amount of energy. I mean, I am just so pumped up coming out of that event just because of, you know, what she's done and how everybody's just kind of picked up and run with it. So ultimately, I think she'd be happy with kind of where we've gone with this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. For sure.
But never satisfied.
Yeah.
Right. Always reaching for something more and bigger, and yet again, so humble. And I'll quickly just mention, I was with her, we were on our way to Reno when she got a phone call. We were in the airport and she's like, hang on, I just got to take this call. She took the call, she came back, I said, is everything okay? She goes, oh yeah, it was just People Magazine. I'm like, what do you mean it was just People Magazine? What are you talking about? You know, but that's how she was. Like she didn't care about that. I mean, it was good exposure to get the national message out, but it was just, she was so incredibly selfless and humble and driven and super positive. And I think that's the one thing I just keep taking away from when I think about my sister and I think about Neighbor Brigade. And it's not, you know, there are ups and downs with running a chapter too. You know, we don't always have the volunteers that we need to serve a need and we're running out and grabbing a pizza or whatever. But I think of Pam and I think, what would Pam do? What would she do right now? She'd run out to get the pizza and she'd move on. She wouldn't complain. She wouldn't think there was anything wrong. She focused on her glass always being half full. It's just the way she was. Yeah.
Totally.
I think it was really interesting. I think Uncle Kevin, you mentioned it, how in Wayland you drive by and you notice the houses and the cars, but that didn't mean anything to her. It was, if this family needs a community connection, they're gonna get it. Even if they can support all of Neighbor Brigade with their funds, like they needed that emotional support and community support, and it doesn't matter how much money you have, you're gonna get it. Money doesn't pay for that. So I think she realized that.
I did not realize that she changed her her course load and her coursework, Kevin.
Yeah.
When she realized that she had a passion for a nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know that nonprofit leadership was a college major.
Yes, it is. Management.
And she came out on top too.
Yeah, which we didn't even know until we were cleaning out our closet and the diploma fell off the thing. And I was like, what is this? You know, amazing, just amazing.
Yeah, she worked hard. She was a doer. No doubt. She was a doer.
Okay. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say also, even though she was doing all of these amazing things, she also was doing the personal work at home too. And I think that that is so much of how she was able to move through her Neighbor Brigade work in such a graceful and beautiful way. Like another behind the scenes thing that you asked about, Krista, which wasn't related to Neighbor Brigade, but like her lying on her heated mat meditating on the guest bed in the office, or her journals where she would write about everything she was going through and her feelings and her trust in God to get through it. And I feel like that is so much a part of the story too, that we don't always talk about with the big picture of Neighbor Brigade. But the reason she was able to show up in that way is because she also, like Uncle Paul said too, with her spirituality and faith and doing that personal work and being humble and not being egoic and trusting the process and taking care of herself at home too, I think is a big part of who she was too.
Definitely.
Were you gonna say something on to Mary?
Yeah, I think we definitely have 3 minutes worth.
Yeah, right. I don't even know.
It's good that Mom and Dad aren't on this call because we'd all be crying right now.
So we're not.
Yeah, so should we kind of, what do you think, Krista?
One more question. I don't know. It's just the hope for the future of the organization. And what our
Dream was always for there to be a Neighbor Brigade in every community across the country.
Yeah.
but at least the country.
Yeah. And I think what Dad said too, that who cares about, I mean, we care, but it's not about the name. It's not about the image and like selling the organization. It's about the community and people supporting one another. So even if it's not a neighbor brigade in every community, it's some network of people showing love for each other and care for each other and showing up for each other the way that we were so blessed to have in our lives. And really just spreading that mission.
Yeah, I think even now, if you think about the challenges this country's gone through in the past couple of years, the level of divisiveness that we have, there's a point in time in this country's history when we needed to come together as communities and look out for one another. This is that time. So I think it's even more important going forward that Neighbor Brigade continue what it's doing, continue to kind of set an example of kind of what it's like when people come together to help one another and kind of put their personal feelings aside and do what's right for each other. So I think this is the time for Neighbor Brigade to really take what we've done so far and continue to grow it. And to Catherine's point, kind of put a Neighbor Brigade in every community in the country and the world, for example. So I that's what my hope is.
Well, I think that the pandemic has probably given us a doorway for that, because I don't know about you all, but the thing that I noticed the most is how much I miss being able to have that interaction with people. And Neighbor Brigade provides that, you know, just knocking on the door and showing up with a meal and spending a few minutes, you know, how are you doing? So maybe it's a step forward for Neighbor Brigade as well.
And my best friend from college has been volunteering for the Braintree Neighbor Brigade, and she's been doing grocery shopping during COVID for like elderly couples that are elderly people that can't really be around a lot of people right now just for their own safety. And she says it's like the highlight of her day because it's the highlight of their day to just like have that brief interaction with her when she drops off the groceries. Like they're just so excited, and so it's really providing a lot of like happiness to their lives and to hers too.
Yeah, it's that human to human connection and like the good and humanity and how beautiful it is to connect with people, whether they're from your same social circle or class or not. And just that connection with people is what it's all really about, and what, like Dad said, is what it was about for her too.
And we saw that too with our Pam's run, where we had to go virtual in 2020 for our 8th annual event. And people really responded to that and came together in their own small, you know, bubble community. That was as much as you could do at the time. That was October, and we were still kind of early into it. People weren't really getting out much, but we saw such a great response to that event. So people still needed to be together, even if it was, you know, virtually. They still needed that Pam's Run community. We had family and friends and total strangers participating in, you know, this virtual event that has a following, as you mentioned, Ainsley. You know, the word has gotten out, and to have people from, we had, I think, 400 people, over 30 states were represented in our run this year. And I think that just shows how important it was and is for people to be together in some format and, you know, respond to the need for the Neighbor Brigade to continue to raise funds, to continue the mission, to continue to grow, to have that support from institutions and individuals so that they can keep it going. I think that we do have a real committed following, which is great to see. And I think that would have made Pam extremely happy. You know, we took her dream of having a turkey trot, and I don't know what was in her mind exactly in terms of the number of people who would participate, but you know, our last in-person event had over 800 participants and almost 50 sponsors, and maybe that wouldn't have been a high enough number for her, but I think she would be pleased. And maybe the only thing she would not have been as happy about, being the humble person that she was that we named it in her honor. But I'm quite certain that she's been there every year, because the sun always comes out
Honestly, it's amazing. Amazing. Every year we see the sun. Rain, snow, clouds, that sun beats right through. It's amazing.
Yep.
And Auntie Mary, you have all those pictures every year.
Every
The
year.
sun shining down in the same place in the same way, right next to the flagpole. Like,
Yeah, with us. No question. I can feel her
Oh, yeah.
and I miss her.